Good evening, I'm Anna Kalczyńska and you're watching World News Tonight, coming to you live from Warsaw, Poland. Russia's largest attack on Kharkiv. There are dead and wounded. Air raid alarms have sounded in many cities in Ukraine. Commenting on the latest development, US President Donald Trump makes an analogy of Ukraine and Russia as children fighting in a playground. And instead of peace negotiations, an escalation is unfolding. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at the latest headlines. European Union increasingly frustrated by Israel's Gaza Strip policy. Montenegro mega beach deal reignites debate over Arab investment in Western Balkans. And today, the colorful mermaid parade, a symbol of the city, passed through the streets of Warsaw. Overnight, Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv, experienced its most violent Russian strike since the start of the war. Russians launched a combined attack, striking the city with dozens of drones, guided bombs and missiles. The bombardment was part of the Kremlin's larger retaliatory offensive on Friday night, which killed 7 people and wounded at least 22 across Ukraine. Piotr Miszczuk reports.
The school year is drawing to an end, but these children have their classes in a very peculiar place, a metro station in Kharkiv, which they use as a safe education facility after the school was destroyed by the Russians.
We have 3 classrooms dedicated to our secondary school, and classes are held here, by the way, Monday through Saturday.
The children stayed underground also during the latest attack, Kharkiv's largest since the start of the Kremlin's full-scale war on Ukraine.
It was a horrible morning in Kharkiv, which was hit by 48 Shahed drones, 4 guided bombs and 2 missiles. Civilian infrastructure and residential buildings were hit.
In the face of the Russian offensive, Kharkiv residents scrambled to safety.
I was here, and my daughter was in the next room. I didn't even hear an explosion, just a click. When I opened the door, there was just dust everywhere.
In the wake of the drone attacks, some of them lost their homes.
When the attack drones, started buzzing closer and closer, finally, when the sound was right over our house, we took our dog and cats and hid behind the wall in the corridor. We sat down on the floor, and then it hit.
Apart from Kharkiv, Russia pounded other cities across Ukraine, including the northern and northwestern cities of Chernihiv, Lutsk and Ternopil, rendering at least 4 dead as well. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, Russia launched 206 drones and 9 missiles in the overnight assault, mostly targeted at civilians. As Ukrainian MP Oleksiy Goncharenko told TVP World, this is Russia's retaliation for successful Ukrainian attacks.
We saw an absolutely brilliant attack by Ukrainian Secret Service, which managed to destroy quite a big portion of Russian nuclear air fleet and strategic bombers, which is absolutely unprecedented and brilliant operation, which reduced significantly Russian military capacities in this area.
Moscow has been doubling down on its strikes against Ukraine since peace talks came to a standstill. Ukraine experts predict that in the coming weeks, the Russian attacks are unlikely to subside. For TVP World, I'm Piotr Miszczuk.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is looking to meet with his American counterpart Donald Trump on the sidelines of the upcoming G7 summit in Canada in mid-June. Zelensky's chief of staff Andriy Yermak has announced. The Ukrainian official explained that the Ukrainian delegation's visit to US earlier this week served as a step in preparations toward organizing a meeting between the 2 heads of state. Yermak further expressed hope that US lawmakers will greenlight devastating sanctions on Russia and its energy customers, a bipartisan bill originally proposed by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. The anticipated meeting between Trump and Zelensky will be their second face-to-face encounter since their high-profile row in the U.S. President Oval Office in late February and a 15-minute talk on the sidelines of Pope Francis' funeral in late April. The European Union is increasingly frustrated with Israel's conduct in Gaza. 17 out of 27 member states are in favor of downgrading the US-Israel Association Agreement, which governs relations between the bloc and the Jewish state. In Central Europe, Poland backs the proposal while Hungary opposes it. Diana Skaya reports.
This is what's left of Gaza, and pressure is mounting on Israel. And now frustrated European leaders are turning up the heat as well. Major EU member states are rallying behind a proposal to review their 45 billion euros trade agreement with the Jewish state, calling to hold Israel accountable over the ongoing destruction in Gaza, which has led to tens of thousands of deaths and widespread devastation. 17 EU countries, including Poland, France, Romania, and Slovakia, support reviewing the agreement. 9 others, like Germany, Lithuania, and Hungary, are opposed. Latvia is staying neutral. For starters, Poland, though traditionally pro-Israel, appears to be shifting amid broader EU pressure and concerns over Gaza's civilian casualties. France is feeling pressure too, with growing street protests and a large Arab population increasingly vocal about the war. Meanwhile, Germany and Greece point to historic ties and defense contracts that they're reluctant to jeopardize. Hungary remains staunchly pro-Israel, being one of the Jewish state's closest allies in the EU. Prime Minister Viktor Orban recently welcomed Benjamin Netanyahu to Budapest, ignoring the ICC arrest warrant against him and greeting him with open arms. The result? A Europe split between values and vested interests. The Dutch proposal is the latest in a series of European moves to hold Israel responsible for its alleged war crimes in Gaza. The agreement explicitly states that respect for human rights and democratic principles is key to maintaining it. Now, critics argue that the EU has been slow to invoke these clauses when it comes to Israel. But many have seen this attitude change with recent comments from the EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas.
It is clear from today's discussion that there is a strong majority in favor of review of Article 2 of our association agreement with Israel. So we will launch this exercise, and in the meantime, it is up to Israel to unblock the humanitarian aid. Saving lives must be our top priority.
While the review could eventually lead to sanctions or the suspension of trade preferences, it is yet to be seen whether the matter is set to be revisited at the next Foreign Affairs Council on June 23. Diana Skaya for TVP World.
This week, Bulgaria took a big step towards adopting the EU's official currency. The euro can replace the lev as soon as 1st of January 2026, as the EU Commission has approved the plan. Bulgarian society, one of the poor in the region, seems divided, but the experts remain convinced that the euro will boost the country's competitiveness and thus help attract foreign investments. Paweł Trzaskowski reports.
No turning back now. Bulgaria is planning to adopt the European common currency at the beginning of next year, as it already meets the economic criteria and receives the green light from both the European Commission and the European Central Bank.
If we take a closer look at the figures, we see that Bulgaria's economic performance in recent years have been impressive.
As Bulgaria became the full Schengen area member at the beginning of this year, adopting the new currency will integrate one of the EU's poorest countries even more closely with the bloc. Their motivation to do so is to increase Sofia's economic competitiveness.
If we look at the big picture, what the Eurozone does, it opens doors to new opportunities. There are no guarantees, but it opens opportunities for economic growth.
But also this closer EU integration
will be irrevocable, so if Bulgaria goes that way, they cannot withdraw easily this Eurozone.
And this might be Sofia's answer to the political instability that has been plaguing the country recently. After as many as 7 general elections in the last 4 years, the country is now being ruled by a big tent coalition of centre-right, socialist and populist parties. But an opposition extreme-right revival party is very vocal in protesting the new currency, causing scuffles in the parliament and staging protests across the country.
We, from Revival, will not stop to fight the forceful admittance into the Eurozone.
Revival, the openly pro-Russian party, currently has 33 seats in a 240-seat Bulgarian parliament.
The representatives of the party Revival can often be seen also in Moscow cooperating with Putin's party.
And it's stoking the fears of Bulgarians who are afraid the new currency will cause a price hike.
If they take away our Bulgarian lev, I'm afraid that one by one they will take away everything, including our faith.
Prices won't go down, they will definitely go up. Every normal Bulgarian is worried about this.
However, experts say that historical data shows such a price hike is unlikely.
If we look at other countries, EU member states that joined the Eurozone, we're going to see that we have a one-off inflation increase in a few months after the adoption of the common currency. But in time, this all balances out.
Adopting the new currency by Sofia will be facilitated by the fact that the Bulgarian lev has been maintaining a fixed exchange rate to euro since 1999. The last EU country to adopt the common currency was Croatia in 2023. Paweł Trzaskowski for TVP World.
Is a large-scale United Arab Emirates real estate development going to undermine Montenegro's EU accession bid? According to EU's Commissioner for Enlargement, this multi-billion-euro investment could have repercussions, potentially leading to the destruction of cultural and natural heritage and the displacement of minorities. Aisha Abache breaks down the latest from Montenegro in her report.
The Montenegrin parliament and its prime minister just ratified a tourism and real estate cooperation agreement with the United Arab Emirates for a second time after President Jakov Milatovic refused to sign the agreement amid concerns that the document could violate national laws. Montenegro's reputation as one of the EU's most promising candidate countries.
It is inspiring to see how Montenegro has advanced on its European path.
May now be in danger. The proposed 35 billion euro investment deal consists of the development of a luxury resort by an Emirati investor along one of Europe's longest sand beaches located in Montenegro's seaside city of Ulcinj. The region is home to a large ethnic Albanian community and a vital ecologic zone home to over half of Montenegro's migratory bird species. The EU Commissioner for Enlargement has explicitly raised concerns over the opacity of the investment agreement.
All international agreements Montenegro signs should be in line with the national constitutional and legal framework, the EU acquis. The agreement on cooperation in the field of tourism and real estate development prima facie does not contain provisions detailed enough to be in conflict with the EU acquis.
The EU acquis communautaire, particularly in areas like public procurement, competition law, environmental protection and minority rights, forms a cornerstone of accession negotiations.
Montenegro and Albania have a challenging path ahead of them in terms of European integration.
But speed is not a characteristic of the accession process.
It's also an instrument of pressure. We have these possibilities. If you don't open the door for us sooner to the EU, we are going to go for other actors and they are going to bring their own money in the region.
And Montenegro's government has boldly pledged to wrap up negotiations by 2026 and become a full EU member by 2028.
If we want to fulfill your ambitious goals, closing still 25 chapters until the year of 26, we will have to work hard, and we will.
Local communities voiced their opposition when the deal surfaced in April.
This was organized by the Prime Minister without asking for consent from the local authorities in Ulcinj or without asking actually anything from the local NGOs and activists and business communities.
It is not a done deal, however. The president still hasn't signed the deal even though it got ratified for a second time. It is in his power to go to the Constitutional Court or to actually intervene and prevent the application of this law. Montenegro stands at a defining moment, caught between the rapid influx of foreign capital and the slower, rule-bound EU accession. For TVP World, I'm Aisha Badja.
A pride parade marched through the streets of Gdańsk today, embittered by results of last week's Polish presidential election, but with high hopes for progress on issues important for the LGBTQ+ community. Thousands of people took part in similar parade in Wrocław. Once a source of deep political and social controversy in Poland, the Pride Parade has grown into a powerful symbol of equality and freedom. Ovidiusz Nicieja reports.
This is the 10th Gdańsk Equality Parade. On the one hand, it's a celebration of the LGBT+ community. On the other, a form of protest against what these people see as a lack of political progress on the issues important to the community.
I am here because I believe this celebration is important for everyone, regardless of gender, religion, or skin color. We need to be here to show that we stand together. This is especially important in a time when our country is so divided and needs to unite. It is very cool. I'm here for the first time and hopefully not the last.
I'm here for the people. Great people come here. There is a great atmosphere. I was here 2 years ago. I am here today.
Thousands of people are taking part, mostly young people. However, many generations are widely represented at this event. It's Pride Month, and dozens of such events take place in many Polish cities.
There is no equality in Poland because I cannot marry or enter into a civil partnership with whoever I want. People cannot live safely in their families. Same-sex couples are not sanctioned, and if someone threatens us, they are not prosecuted. We are waiting for equality on a national level. That is the law on civil partnerships with adoption of children, as well as for the amendment of the criminal code and the inclusion of hate speech based on orientation and gender identity.
During this event, we have seen speeches by politicians, a concert, and also many other attractions. However, the main part of this is this parade through the streets of Gdańsk, celebrating equality and all of the LGBT+ community. From Gdańsk for TVP World, I'm Ovidiusz Nicieja.
Meanwhile, in Warsaw, mermaids are making wave, literally. The city's iconic symbol came to life this Saturday as the 4th annual Mermaid Parade flowed through the streets of downtown Warsaw, with each of the city's districts bringing its own float to the spectacle. Our Diana Skaya was on site and gives us this next report.
Umbrellas are up, but so are the smiles here in the heart of Warsaw. Now, the little raindrops didn't stop hundreds of families and visitors to come attend this year's festivities of the Parada Syrenki. It's what you're seeing behind me. In Polish, it translates to the Parade of Mermaids, dedicated to Warsaw's iconic symbol, the Warsaw Mermaid. Now, there's been a whole bunch of performers here, from circus performers to dancers. And here come the colorful mermaids. Are you a real mermaid?
Yes, I'm a real mermaid.
What brings you here today? What is so special about this parade?
Have you seen those 20 sirens? Mermaids, I'm sorry. They are great. So everyone is here. So we are very excited and we are looking at our district. So our district is Praga Południe. So the mermaid from there was very nice.
I'm really into the cars. I'm interested in them and I also like all these mermaids. Same here. I like the cars too. It's just fun here. There are lots of different people showcasing their talents like those. For example, those with those masks.
Who are you?
I'm for rivers.
You're for the river?
Yeah.
We've been seeing 18 themed floats of vibrant samba dancers, street performers, circus performers, even pirates, and a whole lot of Warsaw charm. Now, the Mermaid Parade is held annually in Warsaw, and each year various districts and cultural institutions participate, and they come together by creating these unique mermaid-themed floats, really showcasing Warsaw's local heritage and creativity. Now, the festivities kicked off at 1 p.m. at Rondo de Gola. And right now, the crowds were heading from Nowy Świat. They're going on to Krakowskie Przedmieście. And they're heading all the way for the grand finale, which is going to feature a series of Disney classics for kids and for adults next to the Royal Castle. Diana Skaya for TVP World in Warsaw.
I'm afraid we need to change this cheerful tone. As NATO leaders prepare to meet in The Hague on June 25th, pressure is mounting to step up support for Ukraine and tighten enforcement of sanctions against Russia. During this recent visit to Washington, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz appeared a staunch advocate of the sanctions against the backdrop a bipartisan U.S. bill aiming to target countries still buying Russian oil and gas, cutting off a key source of funding for Moscow's war. Joining us to discuss the current stage of Allied pressure on Moscow is Garvan Walsh, CEO, Article 7 Intelligence for Democrats. Good evening.
Good evening.
So
it's
during a
pleasure,
G7 summit in Canada, Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump could meet in person, we learn. Preparations are well underway, says Andrei Yermak, head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, who's just concluded his visit to Washington. As we see, the democracy is relentlessly pursuing efforts to pressure Putin. How about Donald Trump? Do you see him and do you understand he's eager to help Ukraine at this point?
I'm not particularly in the camp that thinks Donald Trump is going to help Ukraine. I think he's got more irritated with Russia than he had been before. He realizes it's not going to be possible to end the war in one day like he had originally announced. I mean, even if nobody thought it was ever going to be one day, he did probably think that he was going to be able to bring a deal, particularly by putting pressure on Ukraine. But he severely underestimated Ukraine's willingness to fight and the willingness of Europe to support Ukraine as well. The original plan had been to isolate Ukraine, force it into a peace deal that would have given Russia sort of a positive position from which to launch future attacks. That didn't work. Ukraine has held strong, and as a result, he's going to have to try something else. He seems, increasingly irritated. He sort of said, "Oh well, let them fight it out." It seems that Trump is growing irritated by the inability of Ukraine and Russia to agree, which isn't surprising because they simply have completely opposite aims in this negotiation. Russia still wants to take control of at least significant parts of Ukraine. There was a recent assessment released by Ukrainian intelligence suggesting they wanted to reach the Dnipro River and then cut Ukraine's access to the sea off. That would be less than total destruction of Ukraine, but it would reduce Ukraine to a state that is significantly less economically viable. It would threaten Romania, it would threaten Moldova, and clearly this is something that Ukrainians want to fight against and make sure doesn't happen.
Adding to this frustration, irritation of Donald Trump is, and has been recently, Friedrich Merz, who recently, during his visit to the White House, also lobbied for the sanctions on Russia. So it seems like the history has turned around. Under Biden-Scholz administrations, the conversation was quite different. And now it's the Trump administration which pushes the brake on sanctions. So how do you think these talks and visits actually could change the tone and play an influence on Donald Trump?
I mean, I think Merz is very clear that Ukraine's independence and Ukraine's accession to the EU and NATO is an essential part of European security. He wants to see that happen. He has committed huge amounts of German money to rearm Germany to protect European security, whereas Trump is relatively indifferent to that kind of situation. The Trump administration, insofar as it has any coherent policy, just wants to get out of Europe. It wants to reduce its commitments beyond the American continent. It wants to focus on territorial defense of the United States and focus on perhaps policy in Asia and helping American allies defend themselves against China. But it would rather leave Europe to the Europeans. Merz is understanding this. He understands that there's a need to step up. And when it comes to sanctions, well, Europe is actually in a pretty good position to impose further sanctions if it wants to. It's physically much closer to Russia. And if necessary, if the US fails to produce further sanctions, the EU can start thinking about secondary sanctions. It can start thinking of innovative uses of trade policy to get around the Hungarian and Slovak veto of sanctions. There are many options still in Europe's arsenal here to put further economic pressure on Russia.
Good point. But coming back to the sanctions still on the American side, how likely is it that the Congress could pass the bill on sanctions even if Donald Trump opposes it?
I mean, Congress can pass the bill, but Donald Trump can veto it. And they would need 2/3 of both houses of Congress to override the veto. And I don't currently see the Republican Party having enough spine to resist Trump sufficiently to override his veto. I think that would be very difficult. The Republican senators mostly seem to be very cautious about defying Trump, and the same is true in the House of Representatives. So it would be a very tall order to override the presidential veto and get those sanctions in place.
Europe, in the meantime, braces up for the next phase of the confrontation with Russia, and so the NATO alliance has prepared a classified document on preparing capability targets, which outlines the number of brigades and as key weapon system each NATO members must possess to effective collective defense. So there's no clear timeline. However, it's up to 10 years for expansion. How do you, in your opinion, the pace? What's your opinion on the pace of this schedule?
There are certain urgent things Europe has to do, particularly when it comes to defending its airspace, being able to suppress Russian air defense if it's going to engage in any kind of operations that will be able to deter Russia. Any NATO expansion plan obviously is undertaken under the scenario that the US would still be involved, whereas European countries actually need to prepare for a situation which the US disengaged from Europe, and Europe would have to defend itself on its own from Russia. Now, in this context, we would have to remember that one of the most powerful armies ever seen in European history, which is the army of Ukraine, would actually also help in that mission. Were Ukraine to fall, it would be much, much more difficult for Europe to be able to defend itself without American help. But with Ukrainian help and with the large land forces that Poland is developing, with the advanced air forces and integrated Nordic Air Command, with British involvement and French support, particularly in matters of nuclear deterrence, Europe is well placed to get to a stage where it can defend itself. Using its own means. The NATO target of 3.5% of core military spending is a reasonable number to achieve that kind of capability. Some countries, particularly Spain, Italy, that see themselves less threatened by Russia and have difficult fiscal situations, will find it difficult to reach that 3.5%. The United Kingdom will also find it difficult because it's in restricted financial circumstances, as is France. But with Germany, Poland, the Baltic states, and the Nordic countries, there is enough fiscal headroom to make good progress in being able to defend Europe on its own and meet those commitments that have been discussed at NATO.
Ukraine has been invited to the NATO summit that was announced by Mark Rutte this Wednesday. Do you expect Volodymyr Zelensky to attend?
I hope he does. I mean, we'll have to see whether he does. It would be great to see him there. It would be an important symbol to say that Ukraine is very much part of the Western and European family. Obviously, the question here is, if he is to attend, he needs to be able to announce something positive, and then we'll have to see whether the Americans in particular can be persuaded to give him enough of a win to make attending the summit worthwhile.
Thank you so much, Garvin Walsh. Thank you for joining us this evening here on World News Tonight.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching this evening bulletin here on TVP World. Please stay tuned to TVP World for more news and more commentaries.